The Devourer's arrival, the Christian swarm had been music, devouring worlds. For over 2,000 years, they moved through the galaxy like locusts, stripping planets of resources and leaving behind nothing but dead rocks floating in empty space. Their fleet consisted of 280 bio ships, massive living vessels grown from the flesh of conquered species and powered by the screams of those they had enslaved. No one had ever stopped them. No one had even slowed them down. The Meridian Alliance was a collection of 7 peaceful species who shared the outer rim of the galaxy. They had built their civilization on trade and diplomacy. They had no standing armies. They had no weapons capable of fighting a threat like the Christians. When the swarm scout ships appeared at the edge of their territory, the Alliance knew they were doomed. They sent out desperate calls for help to every species within 100 light years. Most ignored them. A few sent messages of sympathy but no actual assistance. Galaxy had learned long ago that fighting the Christians was suicide. Then humanity answered the call. The humans were relatively new to the galactic community. They had only made first contact with alien life 40 years earlier. Most species viewed them as harmless traders and explorers. They were friendly and curious. They seemed more interested in learning about art and culture than in weapons or warfare. The Meridian Alliance was grateful for any help, but they did not expect much from these young newcomers. Admiral Sarah Chin received the distress signal while her fleet was conducting routine patrols near the Vega sector. She was 51 years old with black hair streaked with gray and eyes that had seen too many battles in humanity's short time among the stars. She had fought in the colony wars, where human factions had nearly destroyed each other before finally uniting under the Terran Federation. She knew what war looked like. She knew what desperation felt like. When she read the reports about the Christian swarm, she made her decision in less than 5 seconds. Her tactical officer, Commander Marcus Webb, stood beside her on the bridge of the TFS Vigilance. He was younger than the Admiral by 15 years, with sandy brown hair and a scar across his left cheek from a training accident that had almost killed him. He had served under Admiral Chen for 8 years and trusted her judgment completely. Commander, she said quietly, set course for the Meridian system, maximum speed. Marcus looked at her carefully. Admiral, we only have 12 ships. The intelligence reports say the Christians have more than 200. Chin smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then I guess we will have to be very clever about this. The Vigilance and her sister ships jumped into hyperspace. They would reach the Meridian system in 36 hours. That gave Chin plenty of time to review everything humanity had learned about the Christians. It was not much. The swarm kept to themselves and destroyed anyone who got too close, but there were patterns in how they fought. They relied on overwhelming numbers and biological weapons. They had never faced an enemy who could match their ferocity. Chin intended to teach them a very painful lesson. Back on Earth, the Terran High Command received Chin's report about her intentions. There was immediate debate about whether she should be recalled. Sending 12 ships against the Korean swarm seemed like throwing away valuable military assets for no gain, but fleet Admiral James Richardson, the highest ranking officer in the Terran Navy, made the final decision. He was 70 years old and had fought in more wars than most people could count. He had gray eyes that seemed to look right through anyone. He spoke to. "Let her go," he said, firmly, "and prepare the reserves. If Chin is right about this, we are going to need everything we have." Meridian Alliance capital world of the Sierra was a beautiful planet covered in blue oceans and green forests. 20 billion souls called it home when the Crithian swarm arrived in orbit. The sky turned black with their ships. They did not issue demands, they did not offer terms of surrender, they simply began the harvest. Massive tendrils descended from the bioships and started stripping away the atmosphere. Planetary defense stations fired everything they had, but their weapons barely scratched the living hulls of the invaders. Admiral Chen's fleet dropped out of hyperspace. At the edge of the system, she stood on her bridge and watched the horror unfolding on the Sierra. Her jaw tightened. "Marcus," she said quietly, "tactical assessment, the Christians have deployed in a standard harvesting formation." He replied, 280 ships in low orbit. They are completely focused on the planet. They have no picket ships, no early warning systems. They think they are completely safe. Chin nodded slowly. "They have never fought anyone who could hurt them. They have grown arrogant. Let us use that against them. All ships prepare for silent approach. Load kinetic kill vehicles. Target their command ships first." The human fleet moved through the outer system like ghosts. They used minimal power and let the natural movement of asteroids and debris mask their approach. The Christians focused entirely on consuming Thera. Never noticed the 12 small ships moving into attack position. Chen waited until they were close enough to guarantee hitting their targets. Then she gave the order, "All ships fire everything you have." The void lit up with hundreds of missiles and kinetic projectiles. Humanity had learned during their own wars that sometimes the simplest weapons were the most effective. The kinetic kill vehicles were just dense tungsten rods accelerated to incredible speeds. When they hit the biohips, they punched through living flesh and bone like bullets through paper. 30 Krian vessels exploded in the first 10 seconds. The biological systems that kept them alive ruptured and sprayed toxic fluids into space. The swarm reacted with confusion and rage. They had never been ambushed before. They had never lost so many ships so quickly. Warlord Jakar commanded the swarm from his flagship. Massive creature that had once been 12 different species merged into one horrific form. He screamed orders in a language that sounded like grinding metal and breaking bones. "Find the attackers and destroy them. Show no mercy." The Crithian ships turned away from the Sierra and began hunting for the human fleet, but Chen had already moved her ships to new positions. She knew she could not win a straight fight. She had to be faster and smarter. She scattered her fleet across the system and used hit-and-run tactics. One ship would appear, fire a salvo of missiles, and then disappear back into the asteroid field before the Christians could respond. Another ship would attack from a completely different direction. The swarm was used to overwhelming enemies. With numbers, they had no experience fighting an opponent who refused to stay still. For 6 hours the battle continued. Chen's 12 ships danced through the system like predators, hunting much larger prey. They targeted command ships and supply vessels. They aimed for the weak points in the bio ship's organic armor. Every shot was carefully planned. Every attack was designed to cause maximum damage with minimum risk. The Christians grew more frustrated with each passing hour. They had lost 70 ships and had not managed to destroy even one human vessel. On Tessera, the population watched the battle unfold in the sky above them. They saw the massive Crythian biohips exploding in brilliant flashes of light. They saw the small human ships moving with impossible speed and precision. For the first time since the swarm had arrived, they felt something they had not felt in days. They felt hope. Meridian Alliance broadcast a message to Admiral Chin. They thanked her for buying them time. They praised her courage, but they also sent a warning. The main Crythian force was on its way. 600 additional bioships were jumping into the system. Even Chen's brilliant tactics would not be enough to stop that. Many enemies. Chen received the message and felt her stomach tighten. She had known this moment would come. She had hoped for more time, but hope was not a strategy. She opened a channel to her ships. This is Admiral Chin. We have done what we came to do. We have shown the Christians that humanity will not stand by while innocent people are slaughtered. We have proven that we can hurt them, but now we need backup, and backup is on the way. Hold your positions, trust in your training, and get ready to witness something the galaxy has never seen before. Marcus looked at her with confusion. Admiral, what backup? We are the only human ships in this sector. Chin smiled, and this time there was real warmth in it. That is what everyone thinks, Commander. That is exactly what we wanted everyone to think. She pressed a button on her command console and sent out a coded signal. It was a simple message, just 2 words, the words that would chain everything. Omega Protocol. Across the system, space began to ripple and tear. Hyperspace windows opened like wounds in reality, and through those windows came the thunder of humanity unleashed. The Armada awakens. The first fleet to emerge was the Second Terran Battle Group under the command of Rear Admiral Thomas Reeves. 20 warships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls painted with the blue and white colors of the Terran Federation. Reeves was a veteran of the Titan Rebellion, a man who had spent 15 years fighting in the frozen moons of Saturn. His voice came through on Admiral Chen's communication channel, crisp and professional. Second Battle Group reporting as ordered. Admiral, we are ready to engage. Before Warlord Jakar could even process what was happening, a second hyperspace window opened on the opposite side of the system. The Third Fleet appeared, commanded by Vice Admiral Patricia Onquo, a brilliant strategist from the Lagos Military Academy on Earth. Her 18 ships included the newest carrier class vessels, each one holding squadrons of fighter craft that immediately began launching into the void. Admiral Chin Akinquo said with a slight accent that spoke of her Nigerian heritage, the Third Fleet stands ready. Let us show these creatures what humanity brings to war. The Christians began to panic. Their bioships designed for harvesting defenseless worlds scrambled to form defensive positions. Jakar roared commands, but his forces were scattered across the system from chasing Chen's original 12 ships. They had no unified formation. They had no coherent strategy. They had only ever needed overwhelming numbers before. Now those numbers meant nothing. A third hyperspace window opened, then a fourth, then a fifth. The arrival points had been carefully calculated. Each fleet emerged in a position that cut off Krathian escape routes and created overlapping fields of fire. Admiral Hiroshi Yamamoto brought the 4th Fleet with its specialized electromagnetic pulse weapons. Captain Elena Volkov commanded the 5th Fleet's destroyer squadron, small, fast ships built for close combat. Admiral Wami Mensa led the 6th Fleet, heavy cruisers with armor thick enough to withstand direct hits from biological weapons. On the bridge of the Vigilance, Commander Marcus Webb stared at the tactical display with his mouth open. Admiral, how many fleets did we bring? Chen watched the screen with satisfaction as 3 more hyperspace windows opened simultaneously. All of them, Marcus, we brought all of them. The 7th Fleet under Admiral Chen's old mentor, Fleet Admiral James Richardson himself, appeared with the pride of the Terran Navy. These were the newest ships equipped with weapons that had been tested in secret for the past 5 years. The 8th Fleet brought electronic warfare specialists who immediately began jamming Christian communications. The 9th Fleet consisted of support vessels, medical ships, and mobile repair facilities. Everything needed to sustain a long campaign. And then the 10th Fleet arrived. It was smaller than the others. Only 8 ships, but these vessels were different. They were experimental warships built from technologies humanity had reverse engineered from a dozen different alien species and then improved upon. Their commander was someone Chin knew well. Her younger brother, Captain David Chin, appeared on the communication channel with a wide grin. Sorry we are late, Sarah. We were testing the new weapons. I think you are going to like what we brought. The experimental ships powered up weapon systems that glowed with an eerie blue light. These were plasma accelerators, devices that could superheat matter to temperatures found in the cores of stars, and then projected across millions of kilometers with pinpoint accuracy. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as 10 human fleets, over 160 warships, took up positions around the Meridian system. Species that had refused to help the Meridian Alliance now scrambled to understand what they were seeing. The humans, the friendly traders, and curious explorers had hidden this much military power. The peaceful species that seemed more interested in music and art than warfare had been concealing an armada capable of challenging any force. In known space, Warlord Jakar felt something he had not experienced in his long violent life. He felt fear. His biohips were designed to terrify and overwhelm. They were living nightmares that had conquered countless worlds. But looking at the human formations, at the cold precision of their positioning, at the sheer number of weapons pointed at his swarm, he realized he had made a terrible mistake. These were not prey animals. These were apex predators who had been pretending to be harmless. Admiral Chin opened a wideband channel that every ship in the system could hear. Her voice was calm and cold, the voice of someone who had made peace with violence long ago. Christian Swarm, this is Admiral Sarah Chin of the Terran Federation. You have violated the territory of our allies. You have murdered innocent beings. You have shown the galaxy that you understand only strength and brutality. Very well. Let us speak a language you understand. All fleets you are authorized to engage. Show them what humanity does to those who prey on the weak. The battle that followed would be studied in militarities for generations. The 10 Human fleets moved with coordination. That seemed almost telepathic. They had trained for this scenario for years, running simulations and war games in secret. Every captain knew their role. Every crew had practiced their part, until it was instinctive. The second and third fleets formed the anvil, a solid wall of firepower that the Christians crashed against. The fourth and fifth fleets were the hammer, striking from unexpected angles and driving the biohips into kill zones. The remaining fleets provided support, cutting off retreat, jamming communications, and ensuring that no Crithian vessel escaped. The Christian biohips fired their biological weapons, acid clouds that could dissolve metal, spores that could infect and corrupt enemy crews, living missiles that burrowed into hulls and spread like cancer through ship systems. These weapons had destroyed hundreds of civilizations, but humanity had prepared for them. The Terran ships had been designed with multiple redundant systems. Hulls were treated with compounds that neutralized biological agents. Every lesson humanity had learned from fighting itself, every innovation from 1,000 years of human warfare had been incorporated into these vessels. Captain David Chen's experimental fleet demonstrated the plasma accelerators. The superheated matter struck Christian biohips and literally boiled them from the inside out. Entire vessels burst like overinflated balloons, spraying biological matter across the void. Heavy cruisers of the Sixth Fleet simply plowed through enemy formations, their thick armor shrugging off attacks that would have crippled other vessels. Admiral Yamamoto's electromagnetic pulse weapons shut down the nervous systems that controlled the bioships, leaving them drifting helplessly in space. Jakar tried desperately to rally his forces. He screamed orders and threats. He promised rewards to any captain who could break through the human lines, but the swarm was collapsing. They had never faced an enemy who was better prepared, better equipped, and better led. They had spent 2,000 years as unstoppable predators. In 6 hours, humanity reduced them to prey. The 600 reinforcement ships that had been approaching the system detected the battle and made a choice that would have been unthinkable days earlier. They turned around and fled. The mighty Christian swarm, terror of the Outer Rim, retreated before a species they had dismissed as harmless merchants. Admiral Chen watched the enemy flee and felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders. She had just killed thousands of beings. The void around them was filled with the wreckage of biohips and the frozen bodies of Critan warriors. This was not a moment for celebration. This was a moment for grim reflection. Commander Marcus Webb broke the silence. Admiral, the Meridian Alliance is requesting communication. Chin nodded. Put them through. The face of High Chancellor Vexer appeared on the screen. The Chancellor was a Meridian, a species that resembled tall, graceful birds with blue and gold feathers. Her eyes were filled with tears. Admiral Chen, you have saved our world. You have saved our entire civilization. We can never repay this debt. How did you do this? How did you hide such power? Chin chose her words carefully. High Chancellor, humanity learned a terrible lesson. Our history, we almost destroyed ourselves with our own weapons. We fought wars that killed billions of our own people. When we finally achieved peace and reached the stars, we made a decision. We would present ourselves as peaceful explorers. We would focus on trade and culture and diplomacy, but we would never forget the cost of being unprepared. Every human colony, every ship, every station has been built with defense in mind. We hoped we would never need this armada. We prayed that the galaxy would be a place where strength was unnecessary, but we also remembered an old saying from Earth: hope for the best but prepare for the worst. The communication channels exploded with activity. Every major species in the galaxy wanted to talk to the Terran Federation. Some offered alliances, some demanded explanations, some simply wanted to understand how humanity had accomplished what they had just witnessed. The peaceful traders had revealed themselves as warriors capable of defeating one of the most feared forces in known space. Fleet Admiral Richardson appeared on Chen's private channel. His weathered face showed both pride and concern. Well done, Sarah. You executed the plan perfectly, but you know what comes next. The galaxy will never see us the same way again. Some will respect us, others will fear us. And fear can be just as dangerous as any weapon. Chen understood perfectly. Humanity had crossed a threshold. They could never go back to being seen as harmless newcomers. They had shown their teeth. They had demonstrated their capability for organized violence. Question now was what they would do with that reputation. She thought about the billions of lives on Thessera who would live because of this battle. She thought about the other species who might be saved because the Christian swarm had finally met their match. She thought about the burden humanity had just accepted, the responsibility of being strong enough to protect not just themselves but others as well. On Earth, in the Great Assembly Hall of the Terran Federation, representatives from every human colony gathered to discuss what had happened. They argued that humanity should retreat back to its own territory and avoid further entanglements. Others insisted that having revealed their strength, they now had an obligation to use it wisely. The debate would continue for months, but in that moment, as the 10 fleets held position around a world they had saved, as the Meridian Alliance broadcast their gratitude across the galaxy, as species that had ignored cries for help now reconsidered their positions, humanity made a choice that would define them for centuries to come. They would not be conquerors, they would not be bullies, but they would never again stand aside while innocent beings suffered. Admiral Sarah Chen looked at the stars beyond her viewport and thought about all the lessons humanity had learned through pain and struggle. They had climbed out of caves and conquered their own world. They had nearly destroyed themselves and then found peace. They had reached the stars with hope in their hearts and weapons in their holds, and now when the galaxy needed them, they had shown that humanity understood a fundamental truth. Peace was not the absence of strength. Peace was the choice made by those strong enough to choose differently. The 10 fleets began the long journey home, leaving behind a galaxy that would never underestimate humanity.